Welcome to Embracing the Bold Radio Hour, where we explore the vibrant arts, entertainment, and design scene right here at Valencia College. Join us as we chat with students, faculty, and artists about their journeys, inspirations, and professional experiences. Each episode unveils the creative pulse of our campus, offering insights into the world of artistry and education. Let's delve into the heart of creativity together right here on Embracing the Bold. We're so glad you joined us today, and I'm your host, Rebekah Lane. Hi, folks. Today we have Courtney Lewis, and Courtney is the program chair for the New Media Communication Associates that we have right here at Valencia College. How you doing, Courtney?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. It's really good to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So the New Media Communication program has always collaborated with the School of Arts and Entertainment, but with the current college restructuring, this program is now directly under the School of Arts, Entertainment, and Design. I'm still working on adding that there. School of Arts, Entertainment, and Design. So because it is new, I'd really like to learn more about what your program offers. So what is the New Media Communication Associates?
Sure. So New Media Communication is kind of a convergence of media and strategy and digital media. And so our two tracks in the degree program are social media strategy, so integrated social media strategy, and mobile journalism. So the goal is to teach students how to go out, collect news, write news stories, and present it both in a digital format in the social media realm, as well as traditional print news. And so with that, mashing those two things together, students get an aspect of what it would be like to be a mobile journalist. So if you're on the go taking stories and pushing them out to a public that can consume them largely through social platforms or digital platforms.
Okay, so you're not just teaching students to be journalists, although journalism seems to be a part of what this program does.
Correct. So, yeah, at our core, I would say it is journalism. And then from there, we're looking at how journalism now converges with many other aspects of our daily lives. And so with social media being at the forefront of how students communicate with each other, it is definitely part of the strategy that we're looking at, making that part of how students can be more profitable and more deliberate in their creation of content in the social media realm.
So you're really training students to leverage social media.
Exactly.
To share news, to share marketing, to
tell stories. So sometimes the story is, breaking news. Other times the story is more arts and entertainment. So we cover a lot of the things that happen here on campus. And so we teach students how to go out, interview folks, collect the facts, get live sources, and put that into a story that could either be news or it can be entertainment.
That's great. I know this is a little off topic, but it really makes me think of that quote, "The medium is the message."
Okay.
How does working with social media shift what it means to be a journalist?
I think the basic principles of journalism still apply, and I think that's how we keep the accountability into what we say is our storytelling, is by using those journalistic principles, relying heavily on ethics, relying heavily on understanding communication theory and communication law. And so teaching students that foundation helps them to tell the story authentically, as well as in a way that holds them accountable for how they've collected their sources and how they've collected the information that they're sharing.
I love that you're pairing authenticity and accountability.
Okay.
That's a great. We can be authentic and sincere.
Yes.
And also be accountable for our sources, and make sure that things are both relevant but also true.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that, in the beginning, students struggle with that. So we give them some of those basic principles of how to find credible sources and how to make sure that they aren't operating in a silo and just recycling their own ideas. And so relying on those basic composition principles of how to write an effective, balanced story is important. Even when we think about social media, we don't want to tell that one-sided message, even in that 30-second Instagram clip. We still want to make sure that the content we're sharing is truthful and balanced.
Wow, and that's such a short clip
Yeah.
to represent multiple perspectives.
I would agree. But I think if we keep our focus, we can still maintain the authenticity of telling a true story.
That's awesome. So the new media communication, this major, we're really looking at telling true stories in across multiple mediums.
Correct.
So what classes am I going to take if I pursue this degree?
Yeah. So we start off with some basic understanding of mass media. So MMC 2004 is an intro course, Introduction to Mass Media. And so we'll cover mass media from start to finish, from the very first mass medium, which would be books, to where we are today, where we are looking at the internet and this global world that we've created in the palm of our hands with our phones.
Wow. And so what is the shift? Like, what is still the same when you look at that versus what has changed?
I think the basic principle of mass media is still the same. And so the goal is to reach a bunch of people at once with our messaging and to see how we can create discourse or influence or however you swing it. The goal is to connect with people with those stories and see how we can create more stories or even just broad thought from what we share in our content.
Okay, so I'm going to take mass media, the introduction to mass media class, and then what other classes?
And so depending on whether you're going the mobile journalism route or if you're going the integrated social media route, you may take Intro to Journalism, which is JOU 1000. That's an intro journalism class. You will learn the basic principles of how to write news and how to identify news. And then your final project would be writing a news story that is eligible to be published.
Wow. So how do you identify news?
Well, I mean, the basic principles of, how relevant is it? Is it something that's hot? Is it something that's breaking news? And so who, what, when, where, and how are the basic 5 questions that you always ask, and you should be able to find your news in that.
Okay. Well, and how do you decide, because relevance is kind of that's a broad topic, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you decide whether something is relevant?
I think you could kind of start with asking yourself a few questions. Is it interesting to you, the writer, the journalist? Is it interesting to your audience? And then from there, you would find a topic or a pitch that's somewhere in the middle. It's interesting to you, the writer, and it's also interesting to the audience that you are writing for. And so that's kind of how most news stories are developed.
Okay. That's great. I operate so often in such niche interest levels. I mean, my MFA is in avant-garde theater. Okay. So I tend to operate in very niche circles. So when I think about what is relevant, I go, well, I think it's cool, but does anybody else?
And that's the beauty of social media, is that we don't have to have that one prescribed audience. We can find our niche audiences in many realms. I believe that would be a great use of the hashtag. And so using hashtags to bring our audiences together, it'd be a great way to look at how social media integrates communication.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So an introduction to journalism, you're going to learn how to identify news, and then you're going to learn how to write it, and then you will actually wrap that class up with a publishable article.
Exactly. Yep. And so we have a few of our students who are published this semester in our college news, which is Valencia Voice, valenciavoice.com. So students have the opportunity to not only, write and develop this content in class, they also can publish it and create clips for their future portfolio by writing for the campus newspaper, which is the Valencia Voice.
And you say writing, so this introduction to journalism, I know we talked a lot about like mixed media, integrated media. When you're thinking of this introduction to journalism, is what medias are students using in that class? Is it primarily written content?
Yeah, for that course, the primary format is written, but of course, in the dissemination of their news stories, we use multiple platforms from Instagram to Facebook to, of course, the Valencia Voice, which is a digital newspaper at valenciavoice.com.
Okay, great. And so when you're using multiple platforms, are the students also like writing the stingers for their articles or doing a verbal, like a spoken word introduction?
No, that would be handled by the news staff at Valencia Voice. Rebekah Newman, who is one of our faculty, she is also the advisor for the Valencia Voice.
Okay.
And so the stories are then put through the editing cycle with the Valencia Voice editors, and then the story becomes published. And so their social media editor would then write the tagline or any hashtags that go along with the story as it is posted to their social channels on Facebook, Instagram, and even Twitter, or now X.
Okay. Okay, so that's great. So and remind me, that was which track? If I take Introduction to Journalism?
That's mobile journalism.
It's mobile journalism. So if I'm continuing along with mobile journalism, what's the rest of my journey?
Yeah, the follow-up course to the Introduction to Journalism is JOU 2100C, and that is news reporting. So you'll dive deeper into news reporting and looking at the principles that kind of lead news storytelling. We follow the AP Style Guide, so you'll dig deeper into AP Style, learning how to make sure that your citations are correct, your sources are correct, and just making sure that your stories follow those 5 principles.
And what are the 5 principles?
They generally want to make sure you cover the interesting lead and follow that up with a nice hook in your introductory paragraph, 3 live sources.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And follow that up with a good closing argument.
This is really interesting. So I know that, like, so often when we think of academic writing, we definitely have sources, but the sources are sometimes 200 years old that we got from the library, and we are reframing to be relevant to the argument, but we're reframing through time. And so, like, when you're talking about 3 live sources, how is that different?
Yeah, so obviously if we're focusing on news, the news has to be relevant, and so it has to be now. And so something that happened last week isn't always necessarily news, but we can find an angle on it that makes it news and makes it present for today. And so the live source would be the angle that we would look for to make it relevant. So if you think about some of the political avenues that Florida is going down with some of the new Senate bills. So sometimes those things affect college campuses and they affect students, and students have opinions. And so even though it may have passed last week or last month, we can still make relevant news out of it by incorporating a live source, interviewing a student, and bringing that fresh perspective into this story.
Okay, so when you're saying relevant, you mean relevance as in timely?
Yes.
As in this is happening now or very close to now?
Exactly.
Okay. So not necessarily like emotional relevance, although emotional relevance is something that we would probably like also.
Yeah.
Or not analytical relevance. It's the time relevance that makes it news.
Correct. Or current.
Okay. That's great. And so if I'm learning introduction to journalism, like how do I identify what is now, what is news? And then we've got reporting, which is all of those 5 principles of techniques, and including those live sources. So how do you find those live sources?
Yeah, it would be kind of working through in what would traditionally be called story calls. So you would meet with your editors, or in the case of this class, it's kind of like a class discussion, and we talk about the angle of the story. Like, what are the interesting components of this story that become relevant or have a relative advantage to your audience, which is generally, the student body that you're writing for. And so you would then, focus your story on that angle. And then from there, you should be able to identify what type of sources you would want. Maybe one of the sources that you would want is a school official, someone who works for Valencia College who can talk about how these laws are being implemented within our campuses. And so then we would look at human resources, maybe a vice president, or maybe the vice president for marketing and communication, whoever is the point person for the college that can give us relevant information about how these bills or how this particular story is going to affect our audience or our campus.
Okay. And so it sounds like you might need to interview more people than you might use sometimes.
Oftentimes that is the case. And so you're building your story by looking at the information that you collect from your sources. And so maybe you had an idea about what you wanted the story to be about, but some of the sources that you've uncovered give you more information, and then the story expands, and something that you thought might have been a couple of paragraphs is now an ongoing story that becomes a series of stories, and it's not just one story. And so that's the beauty of news, is that it grows and oftentimes expands.
That's really exciting.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just that idea of uncovering what might really be happening, and fleshing out your perspective.
Yeah, we had a student who had her first experience in the JOU 1000 class. She was writing a story about one of the Senate bills that covered the use of bathrooms on college campuses. And so she was a little bit intimidated. She shared how she was very apprehensive to contact some of these high-level officials at the college, but she, prepared herself. She had her notes. She sent out her inquiry emails to get in contact with these folks to get the interview. And lo and behold, the end result was a brilliant story, and she was super excited and encouraged by the experience. And I believe that we've, from that developed a new reporter. So she got the bug of how great it is to uncover some of these stories and the energy that can be derived from that.
I love that. She got the bug.
Yeah. At least I hope she did.
So, okay. So what else, what other classes am I taking? Mobile journalism. How do I finish this journey?
Yeah. So the next sequence in the mobile journalism would be feature writing. And so if we think about stories that we tell, sometimes they are news, which is, now and relevant, versus a feature, which would be something more in the arts and entertainment realm. So some of the other aspects of our school, such as dance or theater, often have stories embedded in the productions that they make. And so we can write features about those things. And those are not necessarily news stories, but they are developing stories about an event that is coming up or a series of events that we want to cover. And sometimes they can be laced with opinion, and they don't necessarily have to be only fact. So we can have a critical review of a stage play, and that would be part of the feature writing class. So looking at the aspect of other ways to tell stories outside of news, and that would be the JOU 2041C class, feature writing.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it is. And again, similarly, from restaurant reviews to movie reviews to just general events and things going on around town is what some of the students have covered when they write those features in that class.
Do you find people prefer one over the other? Do you find some people prefer feature writing, some people prefer the news reporting?
I believe so. And I think it would be largely based on personality, maybe. So if you are the type of person who likes the facts, then you're going to probably stick to news. If you are more in the entertainment realm, you might want to, kind of venture off into feature writing. And again, with most types of reporting, you're going to get sports reporters, you're going to get entertainment reporters, and most reporters generally develop a beat. And so if you like sports and you write about sports quite often, then you'll probably, pick a beat in the sports realm. Oftentimes, from covering college sports to professional sports, whatever sports events that we have here in Orlando, a lot of our students have access to go out and cover them. We've had students who were given press passes to go to the Orlando Magic games, the UCF football games. So many aspects out there with the press pass to get lots of experience and lots of opportunities.
That's really exciting.
It is. We try to make it as real world as possible.
Well, and it sounds like everything that I'm hearing you say is feels like you're doing so much work to embed students into the culture of the industry.
Absolutely. That is our primary goal, is to give them an idea of what it would be like to work in these industries. And so in as much as our degree is an associate's degree, we want to give them the skills to have an entry-level job, where it be, supporting a reporter, or even developing content and managing content for a social media platform.
That's great. So what are the entry-level jobs? So if I graduate with this mobile journalism focus, what might I do?
Sure. One job comes to mind, social media coordinator. And so that person is basically responsible for coordinating the social content for any particular agency, sometimes nonprofits, often looking for someone at that level to basically just develop content and push it out to their audiences. In the journalism realm, you could be a researcher for a reporter, as you would probably be required to have a bachelor's degree if you were, let's say, going to work for somewhere like the Orlando Sentinel or a larger news organization. But there are tons of publications in the Orlando area that would also allow, submissions from anyone who has the ability to write a news story.
That's great. So it sounds like the easiest route would be like a social media coordinator.
Okay. Yeah, and that's again one aspect.
Or maybe not easiest. I may not have phrased that well.
Yeah, and so again, entry level, and so depending on what those companies require, you can move up at whatever level of advancement from social media coordinator to social media manager, and some of which, again, don't require a particular number of years of experience or degree, but more skill. And that you can develop here in our program as well as, on your own.
Oh, that's great. So if I'm a social media coordinator, what is the day-to-day of that? What's that look like?
I'd say the day-to-day would be gathering content from your constituents or your publics, the people who are, you're working with on a day-to-day basis, and turning that into content for social platforms. And so sometimes that would be using a mobile phone to record events that happen at your organization. And then, of course, editing that together, putting some taglines with it, and turning it into a reel for Instagram or a reel for Facebook or whatever platforms are best suited for your genre or your area.
Okay. And are those where do I look to find those positions?
Generally, any job board is going to have those positions outlined for you. So between Indeed and even, with your advisors here at the college, the workforce office has a list of internships and jobs available. And of course, with your faculty, you can always inquire to them about making connections to find where those jobs are.
Okay. And so what is it? It sounds like you also mentioned being a researcher for a reporter. Mm-hmm. So is that how similar is that to like doing social media coordination?
I think they overlap in some ways because, of course, with social media coordination, you'll be kind of researching your content and kind of archiving the content together before you're developing it into some format that can be disseminated. And so the researcher for a reporter would be doing the same thing, collecting potential sources, collecting potential angles on the story, and then flushing them out together as they work in coordination with the reporter to write the story.
That's really interesting. So how I have never thought about a reporter having somebody who did the research for them.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Is that a collaborative partnership? Is it you find a reporter that you like and they say, hey, come on, let's help me?
Generally, it depends on how the organization is structured. So I can imagine in some areas where one researcher would work for several different reporters, and so perhaps there is some detail that needs to be flushed out on one of the Senate bills. The researcher would go and get all of the facts lined up, present that to the reporter, so that they don't have to go out and dig out all of that information. And sometimes it requires some historical context to understand these types of stories that are being written. And so having someone to gather that information for you is a great help.
Wow. And that sounds really important.
Definitely.
In keeping the news accurate, especially in this fast-paced environment.
Correct. Yeah, it's the fundamentals, but that's how we learn, and that's the best place to make sure that as we are learning, we get the details. Somebody call it grunt work, but it's necessary work because, again, like you say, it helps us to maintain the facts and the credibility.
That's great. And so are these positions that you would have full-time jobs in, or is this more like gig work, or what is that?
Yeah, definitely can be full-time, but again, it varies from organization to organization. The sequence that I would definitely recommend is as you are finishing up your associate's degree, take the internship, which is part of our degree program. And then from that internship, hopefully you can parlay that into a full-time job.
Got it. So what is the internship? Do either track, or do both tracks leverage that internship?
Yes, both tracks offer the opportunity for the internship. So in the degree program, you would take the internship or social media campaigns. And so the goal would be figuring out how to collaboratively pull that content together. And you can either do that on the job training with the internship, or you can do it academically by working in the course to build a social media campaign. But either way, it's a hands-on, direct opportunity to apply the skills that you have learned in the previous coursework.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so how do you find a job that is relevant to the internship?
Sure. So again, looking at the resources out there, LinkedIn, Indeed.com, all of those job platforms and social platforms are helpful when looking for jobs. And so we kind of give you the bridge to cross through the program. So one of the other courses that we offer is media convergence. And so in that course, you are required to start a LinkedIn page, and you are also required to build a portfolio. And so throughout building that LinkedIn page and portfolio, we show you some of the tools by which you can learn to network, finding other people in your field that you have an interest in pursuing, as well as looking at some of the posted jobs that may not be directly in your reach right now, but you can aim for them and figuring out how to make a plan to get to that level. And of course, sometimes they are, ready off-the-shelf jobs that you can apply for with your soon-to-be associate's degree.
Okay. So, I had a question and it just left my mind. I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, that's right. So we've talked a lot about like what the program is, and we've talked a lot about what you might do with this degree. Like with this associates, you can really focus on social media coordinators and researching for reporters and positions in that world. So what do you have any stories of alumni who have successfully graduated and gone off to do interesting things?
Yeah, our program is still relatively new. So the program started right before the pandemic in 2019. So we've had, a few dozen graduates and a few that come to mind. I don't want to tell any names, but I'll talk about the general gist of what they are doing. So their internship was with a New York-based sports gym. And so their job was to interact with clients who were training in the gym to, get their permission to videotape, record some of their workouts and turn that into social media content to advertise for the gym. And so she did a great job at developing this content, almost had, kind of like a personality in her content development, and turned that internship into a full-time job. And so she went from being the social media intern to being the social media coordinator. So she, worked for the gym as last I knew of her employment. And so I hope that she's still working for that gym and, doing great things with the social media content. Others of our students didn't go the route of employment. They went on to four-year degrees, and many of them are working or studying at four-year universities. University of Florida has a great journalism program. University of Central Florida here in Orlando also has a great journalism program. And our students take the springboard from our associate's degree program and go off into those four-year degree programs seeking higher education.
Okay. So it sounds like this program absolutely sets you up to launch an entire career in social media.
Yes.
And work your way up as you build your skill, just on the job, building your skill.
Correct. As with any job or any industry, you'll start at an entry level and then continue to work your way up when you gain more skill and you gain more knowledge.
But the program also sets you up to transfer to a four-year college and succeed within a journalism program.
Correct. It is the associates is different and separate from the AA degree, which many folk know in the Direct Connect program, but it is also eligible for transfer into many four-year degree programs.
That's great. So that gives you a lot of flexibility.
It does, yeah. And so it, again, depends on, the student and what their goals are. But we are definitely looking at many opportunities for students to come straight out of our associate's degree program and go into the workforce.
That's great. So I love that you mentioned people getting the bug for journalism. So how did you get the bug?
For me, it started in high school. I was on the yearbook staff. And as much as we weren't doing journalism, but we were writing stories and we were doing layout and looking at that aspect of communication. And so I served on the yearbook staff for 4 years in high school, eventually becoming the editor-in-chief of my high school yearbook. And then when I went to see my guidance counselor for college application, she recommended communication. I thought that was a good recommendation. Applied to just general communication. I went to UCF for my undergraduate work. And so as I was at UCF looking at opportunities, I learned that there was a ad PR journalism track. And so advertising, PR, journalism, those were the types of things that interested me. And so I went that route, taking both advertising, public relations, and journalism classes.
What did you like about them?
I liked the idea of being able to communicate, and not only communicate, but the influence that communication has on other people. Thinking about persuasion, for one, and looking at how we can kind of deconstruct persuasion. And so I've always been fascinated by communication and the ability to communicate. And even before social media was a thing, looking at how journalists were the original influencers, if I would. And so that was always exciting to me. And just the idea of telling stories and being a storyteller is something that I've always enjoyed about the communication process.
Okay, so you focused on PR and advertising because you really enjoyed the persuasive process and the theories and the deconstructing, the breakdown of that persuasion.
Yes, I did. And beyond that, I mean, it was just the idea of looking at how to relate to publics. And so public relations was also a very strong influencer on the undergraduate work that I did, looking at graphic design, and again, looking at the convergence of all of those things coming together, from advertising to news reporting to print. And it was almost a precursor to where we are today with social media. And so social media has been a great kind of end result of the previous years of study that I had done, looking at advertising, public relations, and journalism, and now how they all converge together. And we have this term we say transmedia storytelling, telling the same message across multiple platforms. And I've always enjoyed that. And so regardless of whether it be a news story or turning that news story into a graphic image to go along with the news story, that's been my interests.
Okay. And so did you go straight from undergrad into the workforce, or did you go directly to grad school? Like, what was your path?
I worked while I was in grad school, so I kind of did both. So I followed my undergraduate degree with a graduate degree in communication, focusing in mass communication. But I also worked in an unrelated field in admissions at the time. But you got to pay the bills.
Yep.
So I was an admissions counselor for University of Central Florida Graduate School, and went to my grad program at night until I finished. And so, again, we can look at one of the basic principles of communication, knowing that communication is pervasive. It's in everything and everywhere. And so, in as much as I was an admissions counselor, I used a great deal of my communication skills in convincing people to sign up for our graduate programs. And so from a marketing standpoint, from a public speaking standpoint, again, just looking at how communication is in everything and everywhere. I can think of times where I would advise the graphic designer about what to put in the marketing materials,
right?
Because we would need to take those along with me to the recruiting fairs. And so, again, it's been communication all the time, regardless of what profession I was in. It had some aspect of communication.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I know one of my masters is in communication, and I studied. But prior to that, I had been working for a theater company as an actor, and we were developing issue-based puppetry theater. Really, the idea of education, entertainment, and creating behavior change. But we were reinventing the wheel, and creatively trying to figure out how to make something happen. But I got to pursue my master's in communication at the same time that I was working for this company. And it was so exciting to go into the research and go, oh, wait, if we use this structure, we will create more effective messaging. If we use this structure, we can help students transition from this idea to this idea.
Exactly.
And it was so exciting to go, okay, we've been intuiting a lot of things, but if we do this way, we might be able to be even more effective. And so just that idea of going into the research for communication, because it is pervasive.
Yeah.
And then finding those real life applications. I guess issue-based puppetry theater doesn't necessarily translate to everybody's real life, but it is. How do you take this messaging format and go, oh, I think I can make this conversation a little bit easier or a little more effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about, again, back to persuasion, looking at a theory called Monroe's motivated sequence, looking at the psychology behind how we motivate people to take action or to shift perspective. And so there is a science behind that. And so, in as much as some people can do it naturally, you can also learn how to put people in a particular frame of mind by following the communication principles. And so similarly to your thought process of, I can do better at this by applying these communication theories, that's pretty much what we're teaching our students, is how to be deliberate in that communication process and how to develop content in a way that becomes directly related to the organization that they're trying to promote.
That's great. So you were working in admissions and you were pursuing your master's.
Yes.
What did you research during your master's? What was intriguing to you?
Persuasion was really my focus. And so I did a deep dive into understanding persuasion, read lots of books and wrote many papers on persuasion. So that's really kind of like the thing that stands out to me. And towards the end, new media was also developing its, rearing its head. We're talking mid-90s, late 90s here. And so I did a lot of new media courses. And just, again, that was not even at the forefront of where we were. It was kind of Web 1.0. We were talking about websites and how to make websites more interactive, and how video was coming into the idea of websites. And so nothing nearly as romantic as we have now when we think about the integration of social media and social media strategy. But back then, we were looking at the kind of the precursor to where we are today. And so MySpace and a few of those other, we'll call them primitive at this point, platforms were kind of rearing their heads. And then here we are today, looking at the evolution of how transmedia storytelling has become social media strategy.
I love that phrasing. Transmedia storytelling has become social media strategy. So something that used to be kind of a separate theory is now fully embedded into our lives.
Yes, without a doubt. And so in as much as, the format changes or the medium changes from books to television to radio to where we are now with video games and social media, and those things also converging with elements like Twitch, where students or people are able to play video games and talk about them simultaneously, or even live stream them through Discord or YouTube. And so again, we are definitely in Web 2.0, where we're more participants as opposed to just simply watching what other people are doing. And so participating in creating media is where the world lives now. No longer are we just simply talking about the things that we want to do. We're living in this world where we can do those things at the same time.
That's great. So, what did you do after that? Did you continue on academia? Did you just go straight through, or did you, or what did you do?
So after grad school, I focused more on work. I left the admissions office and worked for a department for the College of Optics and Photonics. Yes.
Okay.
Still doing marketing, still working on admissions, but specifically for this college. So in as much as I love the creative realm, I've also loved the heavy science. And so this was a good fit for me because, I'm not a physicist, I'm not an optics guru or anything to that nature, but I like the hard science and I felt it easy to tell those stories. And so I worked on marketing campaigns for the College of Optics and Photonics. and did their recruiting as well as their trade shows. And so, one thing about the evolution of science in that, again, early 2000s was going out getting funding. And how do you do that? By promoting the research that you had already done. And so did quite a bit of trade shows where we'd set up a booth, invite folks to come by our booth. We did that for recruiting faculty, recruiting students. So again, just kind of telling the story of optics and photonics. At that time, fiber optics was just coming on the scene. So a lot of the faculty who were researching in the College of Optics were working on some of the technology that we take use of today. And so looking at some of the crystal displays that we have with these 85-inch televisions, a lot of that technology was developed right here at the College of Optics at University of Central Florida.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you say the College of Optics and Photonics, you stayed within UCF.
Yes.
You shifted to a different school.
Correct.
Within the college.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was there from, let's say, 99 to 2007. So for a good long amount of time. Enjoyed what I learned there, and that parlayed into doing marketing and communication for a private company, Brigio Imaging Systems. And so that was an interesting job. This company, they did what we call a passive millimeter wave imaging system. A lot of words to say they were able to detect objects under your clothes. And so, for example, when you go to the airport and you go through the scanning,
Right.
the magnetometer detects metals. This particular machine was able to see the reflection of objects against the skin under your clothes.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was, and it didn't even require radar.
Wow. And so you were working with them to market this to different audiences?
Yes. So I developed their marketing materials, from their brochures to their public relations campaign as well. I wrote their press releases and worked with the director of marketing and PR to manage that account.
That's great. And then, so how did you find your way here to Valencia College?
So along the while, I was always teaching as an adjunct, public speaking, and so did that at night for a good number of years. And then when there was a recession, 2009 timeframe, first thing that gets cut is a marketing budget.
Oh.
So I was unemployed for a moment, and then Valencia, of course, is what picked up the excess. And so when students when people tend to lose their jobs, they look for ways to improve their situation. They go back to school. So thankful for us, they came back. Valencia was growing, and I was able to find a job in the speech department. So I was teaching public speaking for a long while until we developed the associate's program in new media communication.
Oh, that's great.
And so fast forward, 2009, I started back at Valencia full-time, earned my tenure, and here we are today. I'm program chair of the New Media Communication degree program, and we are looking for students who want to learn social media strategy and mobile journalism.
Wow. And this was your project, right?
Yes.
And why did you decide this was a good program for us to have?
Just looking at the amount of industry opportunity in the Orlando area. So with all of the theme parks, many of them are looking for social media folks to manage their social media content. Many of the other area industries and hospitality were looking for the same thing. And so we saw a good influx of people advertising the need for people to manage their social media. And so part of the workforce program is to develop talent to fill this need. And so we were offering journalism classes. We were offering mobile journalism as a track in digital media. And so we were able to blend the two together. And from that, we have new media. So we now have an associate's degree program that covers some of the aspects of digital media as well as the aspects of communication and social media strategy.
That sounds like a really robust program.
I think it's going well. So we've been growing over the years, and the more courses we offer, they continue to fill, and we're continuing to add additional sections of each of the popular courses. And it's been going really well.
I love that. So we're at the end of our time. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I've got some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And you can feel free to pass on anything that you would like to pass on. But question 1, fill in the blank. Creativity is?
Creativity is an interesting question. Creativity is a question.
I love that.
And as we answer the question, we find many aspects of expanding our lives. And so creativity is that unspoken thing that kind of is pulled out of thin air sometimes. Creativity is pervasive as well. It's in everything and everywhere. And so I like the idea of creativity because it allows our minds to wander. And the more our minds wander, the more crazy things we develop. And I'm certain the very first time that Mark Zuckerberg wanted to create Facebook, someone looked at him and thought that it was not going to ever happen. And look what was able to be built from that creativity.
Question 2, what motivates you the most?
I like to be inspired. And so inspiration can come from many things. Sometimes just traveling inspires me to come up with new ideas, or just having that moment to kind of relax. Being in nature is inspiring, and looking at how naturally things just manage to coexist is very inspiring to me.
In 1 to 3 sentences, describe your favorite creative project.
Baking a cake.
Any cake? Is there a particular cake?
Something seems so simple, a pound cake. So my mom was always a baker. This is more than 3 sentences, but
That's okay.
indulge. And she, was a fabulous baker. I picked it up as a hobby as a, teenager, but I never really was able to master the pound cake. And so classic Southern pound cake is light, fluffy, and moist. And for whatever reason, when I was trying to bake the pound cake, it was always dense and just not that classic pound cake texture. So through trial and error, as they say, practice makes perfect. Now I can make a pretty darn good pound cake.
I love that. And what is the best or the worst advice that you ever received regarding your field?
Interesting. The best advice I would say that I've ever received is sometimes it's going to be hard, but you're going to have to fight and press through. And that's true about just about anything. You cannot please all the people all the time. So you just have to fight and press through.
Press through. Hopefully it's better on the other side.
Yep. That's the goal.
Yep. Well, and on that note, what is one warning sign that you watch for when you're considering taking on a project?
Interesting. Warning signs that I look for. Probably chaos. If there's too much chaos or too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say, that steers me away from the project because I like to work on projects that are free range and allow for creativity, that are not as structured as, and narrow in focus.
Okay, so you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. Why do too many cooks in the kitchen change the focus?
I think they change the flavor of the pot.
Aha, got it.
So when ideas are not, coalesced, then, we don't necessarily get the best result.
Okay, so when you say too many cooks in the kitchen, a lot of times what you're really looking for is one cohesive vision.
Yes.
And so when it feels like the vision is not one vision or the vision is not cohesive, that makes you go,
Correct. Because
Okay.
at that point, we're spinning our wheels. We're just kind of trying to come up with ideas that we can move forward. I'd rather either lead the idea forward or have a clear vision that was already established and presented and take that forward.
That's great. Well, because if you have a clear vision, then you have the space to be creative and run.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you stay current in your practice?
Being a user of social media, particularly, and of course, writing news stories and reading. And so I think the best way to be informed is to make sure that we are reading what's relevant, and oftentimes reading counter opinions. So I often seek out that counter opinion, the unpopular opinion, and making sure that what I am thinking or the things that I value are still based in a reality that allows a counter opinion to exist.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you stay current in your practice by looking for opinions that differ from your own, because differing opinions help you reground your sense of reality.
Absolutely.
Ooh, that's great. Okay. Another question. You're creatively blocked, but the deadline is real. How do you get unstuck?
Interesting. So I'm a procrastinator, self-admitted. So the deadline is actually very motivating. And so generally when I am at the deadline, I'm very rarely stuck. It's usually when I have too much lead time that I find myself perplexed with all of the possibilities of ideas kind of roaming around. And so deadlines definitely improve my ability to kind of flush out an idea. Now, the trick is self-imposing those deadlines so that we get everything done before the actual deadline.
Okay, so deadlines help you focus
Yes,
on what is most achievable.
correct.
Okay. And then self-imposed deadlines give you the space to maybe flesh out some of those different ideas.
Yes, so that when we do get to the deadline, I have an idea. We're running, full steam ahead with one solid idea.
Great. So I've got a question here, and I know that this is sticky in that one of the conversations we've had with bringing the new media communication program under the School of Arts, Entertainment, and Design is that it's not necessarily helpful to conflate journalism with entertainment.
Correct.
That's a problematic association. So I hope this question is not problematic. In one sentence, what does being an artist mean to you?
Being an artist to me is having the ability to create and design in whatever genre, be it music, be it dance, be it communication, social media. Being artful, I think, is the root of that. And so creating things that we can admire as beautiful.
Great. And I love that you brought communication into that.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to think about how entertainment and art can be the same, but they don't have to be the same.
Correct.
Yeah, I love that. Can you name one artist, past or present, whose work brings you great joy? And it could be an artist defined as broadly as we choose.
Yeah, I would say, that's hard because there are so many genres of art with greatness. I'll stick with poetry, and I'll go with Langston Hughes.
Ooh.
I like his work because he is cultural, yet prolific, and has been sustaining. I mean, throughout the test of time, his work has survived.
It is relevant.
Agreed.
And last question. What is one thing that you are deeply grateful for right now?
I'm grateful for the opportunity to share knowledge with our students. Sounds a little cliche, but I really do enjoy that light bulb moment where students who may have struggled with an idea or concepts, when they get it, and I can see that they've got it. And so that light bulb moment has served me well for the past 20 plus years in academia, where I've been either teaching or some aspect of communication in the academic setting. And so again, being able to reach people in many vast ways is what is most grateful to me.
That's wonderful. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's been enjoyable for you.
I had a great time. I hope the listeners did too. And just a reminder, if you are considering Valencia College, we hope that these conversations give you some inspiration and insight into the people and the programs that we have here. And if you're already at Valencia College, we hope that these conversations give you insight into your faculty and give you insight into, or also inspiration into where you might go from here. And have a lovely week. And we will see you next time on Embracing the Bold. And we've got the theme song coming up right now. All right, we'll see you next time on Embracing the Bold.